Smith History.
Hello and welcome back to Smith History. In this episode, we're going to be looking at the Second World War. Well, if you're going to look at the Second World War, I would say you need to look at Italy and what was where it was during the Second World War. So to see this, you have to look at Italy's leader at that time. So Mussolini has been credited with the title of the founder of fascism. Initially, of course, he was a follower of socialism in Switzerland. He returned home to Italy and became a well-known journalist. He was appointed editor of a socialist newspaper called Advent, meaning front. But his support for Italy's entry into World War I leads to his break with socialism. Then, in March 1919, Mussolini forms the Fascist Party. He succeeds in winning over many unemployed war veterans. He organizes them into squads known as Black Shirts. He uses Black Shirts to terrorize his political opponents. Because the fascists opposed communism, wealthy businessmen gave them money, and then street fights between communists and black shirts were very common. Over 300 people were killed, and although the fascists, on the orders of Mussolini, often started these fights in the first place, Mussolini used them to claim that the democratic governments were too weak to keep order. Then, in October 1922, Mussolini declared the fascists would march on Rome and seize power. So, while Mussolini took the train to Rome, his followers marched on Rome, and when the king refused to send the army to stop the fascists, the prime minister resigned in protest. The king promptly made Mussolini the prime minister, and now aged only 39, Mussolini becomes the youngest person ever to become prime minister in Italy. Slowly but surely, Mussolini begins to become a dictator. First, in 1923, the Serbo Law is passed. This states that the party that got the most votes would achieve 2/3 of the seats in parliament. This law actually had lots of support because the Italian people wanted to end the regime of weak coalition governments. Then, in 1926, Mussolini announced his intention to establish a dictatorship, and all other political parties were banned. He took on the name of El Duce, or the leader. First of all, he gave the black shirts positions in the police force. This meant that Mussolini's followers could attack their enemies, and they wouldn't have to worry about being arrested. It is important to realize that at this time, Mussolini ruled through propaganda and fear. The fascists controlled all the newspapers, radios, and films. They only comments and pictures that flattered Mussolini could appear. He would bring out images and airbrush people out of them if they contradicted what he would be saying. No one was actually allowed to criticize Mussolini. His secret police, the OVRA, or OVRA, kept an eye on everyone. They beat up people they suspected of being anti-fascist. And between 1927 and 1940, 10 people were executed for opposing Mussolini. 4,000 of his political opponents were imprisoned. Mussolini also wanted all young people to be fascist. Teachers had to take on an oath of loyalty to the fascist government, and schools taught children to be loyal to El Duce from the age of 8. Children belonged to the Ballet or Bala. This was a fascist youth group. This is not to say that Mussolini was not all bad. New motorways, called Astrodads, were built, and the vast Pontine marshes outside Rome were drained, and new towns were built there. Mussolini also disliked the power of the mafia. So, between 1926 and 1928, over 10,000 suspected mafiosi were arrested and many emigrated to the US. In 1929, he improved the relation between the Catholic Church. This was due to an issue in the 1860s when the Pope argued with the Italian government when it took over church-owned property. So, in 1929, he settled the argument over land. The agreement was called the Lateran Treaty. As a result of the treaty, as there is still today, there is an independent Vatican state ruled by the Pope that was set up, that is still there today. Compensation was paid to the church for all the land it had lost. And finally, Catholicism became the official religion of Italy. Then, in the 1920s and 30s, Mussolini supported the League of Nations and was friendly with Britain and France. When Hitler came to power in Germany, Mussolini at first joined Britain and France in opposing him. In 1934, he sent Italian troops to the Austrian border to stop Hitler invading Austria. But then, in 1935, he ordered his army to invade Abyssinia, or what is now Ethiopia. This was an independent African country and was a member of the League of Nations. The Italian army used poison gas and behaved with great brutality in their invasion. The Abyssinians appealed to the League of Nations for help. The League of Nations condemned the Italians and imposed sanctions on Italy. Britain and France supported this decision, but Hitler continued to trade with Italy. Mussolini was angered by Britain and France's decision, as not only had they had many colonies themselves, so it was hypocritical, but when the Treaty of Versailles was signed after World War I, they'd come away with a lot more than Italy. So he changed sides. In December 1936, he made an economic alliance with Hitler called the Rome-Berlin Axis. This alliance was further strengthened with the Pact of Steel, a military alliance in 1939. This committed each side to assist the other in the event of war with another power, and pledging that neither would seek a separate peace or armistice. It is important to know that Mussolini did not like Hitler, and this was not an agreement which would stand well with Italy. In 1939, when World War II broke out, Italy disobeyed the alliance and stayed neutral. It was not ready for war. And only in 1940, just as the Germans were about to defeat France, did Mussolini join Hitler's side. The Italian armies were not very successful. In 1940, when they invaded Greece, they were defeated and had to be rescued by the German forces. In North Africa, the British army also defeated them, and Hitler had to send his best general, Rommel, to help them. Then when the Allies invaded Italy, the king sacked Mussolini and the new government surrendered to the Allies and declared war on Germany. To find out what happened to Mussolini, please continue listening. After the Allies invaded Italy, Mussolini was arrested, but in a daring raid, the Germans rescued Mussolini and they made him the puppet ruler of German-controlled northern Italy. In April 1945, Mussolini attempted to flee to Switzerland, but was captured by anti-fascist Italians. He was shot and his body was hung upside down in Milan. And this is the end of fascism in Italy and the end of Mussolini. Thank you for listening. This was brought to you by Smithco. Please like and subscribe for more videos. You might also like Smith Facts. Smith History is an original Smithco series. Next time, we look at Hitler's rise to power in Nazi Germany.